Penn State is not in the most ideal spot as injuries are piling up at the wrong time. And I swear, if the College Football Playoff Committee actually jumps Notre Dame ahead of Penn State, I mean, that's just the wrong decision.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch. Every single day we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. My name is Zach Seyko. I'm your host of this live show. Looking for your comments, reactions, questions as we are waiting for the college football playoff rankings to be actively released. Kyle Golik of MikeFarrellSports.com is going to be joining me for this live reaction to the playoff rankings. So once those are officially dropped, we will discuss that. But I figured it would be a good topic to start with the Penn State injuries, as now we have confirmation from James Franklin's press conference, and it did not look good, whether it was Anthony Donko and even Alonzo Ford. Those injuries did not look good in the moment, and now it's confirmed that they're long-term, and we can presume that means that they're out for the season, period. Whether Penn State makes the national title or not, Anthony Donko and Alonzo Ford will not be a part of that. Well, they'll be on the team, but they're not going to be able to play on the field again. And it really, I want to start with Anthony Donko because he was becoming Penn State's best overall offensive lineman. Venga Ioane certainly has the case for it as well. But Anthony Donko, he was continuing to get better week in and week out. He was already dealing with bumps and bruises as it was, and was still continuing to get better and was really anchoring that right side of the line, both in pass protection and in run blocking. Pass protection across the board, not as many concerns for Penn State's offensive line as I do in run blocking. Anthony Donko is really good in run blocking. Probably better so than pass pro, but really good at both and was getting better at both progressively. So it is a punch to the gut to lose him in the trenches. And then you flip it over to the defensive side of the football. Alonzo Ford isn't just your rotational backup player. I don't want there to be a misconception that, Alonzo Ford, they can offset this injury. This one isn't as serious. Both are serious. Both are serious and do not help a postseason run for Penn State. This does set them back. The confidence that I had in Penn State going into the postseason, not really trying to think about, okay, how many injuries, but then you have Alonzo Ford and Anthony Donko both go down against Minnesota. That really is a gut punch like any other before Penn State goes into the postseason. That is a starter. Alonzo Ford, to an extent, is a co-starter with how many snaps that he plays and to the effectiveness that he plays them. So Zane Durant and Devontae Thomas have done, Zane Durant especially, this is Zane Durant's breakout season. He has played his way into a day 2 NFL draft pick. He probably won't be back with the Penn State Nittany Lions next season. NIL, different story, so we'll see, but I have my hunch, my assumption is he goes off to the NFL because he's played that way. That's the kind of caliber. But Alonzo Ford has been mirroring Zane Durant's production to an extent. You look at the Pro Football Focus rankings of the interior defensive linemen, Alonzo Ford, I think, was 3 or 4 spots behind Zane Durant in terms of the top interior defensive linemen across the country. So don't just look at Alonzo Ford as, he's just a backup player, he's a rotational guy. Penn State will be able to just fill the void with another player. That's not it at all. Alonzo Ford had a strong impact for Penn State. And then you also factor in that Hakeem Beamon, a 6th-year senior, left the team not too long ago. So what went from interior to the defensive line, one of the deepest groups on the team, all of a sudden loses 2 key players in the matter of a month. Alonzo Ford out long-term. Hakeem Beamon, still don't know the reasoning why he's off the team, but he's off the team. Could have made an impact because I'm thinking to myself, next man up, somebody goes down. Hopefully that isn't the case, but here is that case in the present. And then you also have to think about the fact, okay, Elliott Washington still hasn't been addressed, but he missed the game against Minnesota. That is another key depth player. And Julian Fleming, even though he hasn't been this elite wide receiver playmaker living up to this 5-star ranking that he had coming out of high school, Fleming being available for Penn State, we saw what he did against USC. We saw how valuable he was against USC. Clutch catch after clutch catch. What doesn't show up in the box score is how effective he is as a run blocker. Notice that when he hasn't been available against Purdue and Minnesota, that Penn State's ground game has certainly taken a bigger step back. I don't think the ground game's been the best this season for Penn State. Singleton and Allen are still getting the job done, but Fleming's impact certainly has shown up with him not being on the football field for Penn State. Purdue, you don't need it. But Minnesota, it was bad. It was bad against Minnesota, especially in the first half. So these injuries are starting to pile up. They need to get back Fleming in Washington as it is. Try to get Keon Wiley back. Get Caden Saunders back. Because I can't say that I am as confident as I was in a Penn State playoff postseason run. Can they do well? Can they get matched up with the right teams? Yes, but depth matters. Depth also matters because it allows the starters to play at their best. That's why depth matters. Because then when a Zane Durant, a Devon J. Thomas is out on the football field for snap after snap after snap, those guys aren't going to play at 100%, then they're not the same football player. Logically speaking, that is why depth matters. On the offensive line, I want to go back to Anthony Donko. I like what Nolan Rucci has done. I like how he's progressed. I think he's developing well since his time at Penn State. But there's a reason Anthony Donko is the starter. Nolan Rucci is a little bit of a liability in pass protection, and Penn State is trusting him. He's great in run blocking. I actually respect Nolan Rucci very much so. He's just able to move people. He's just a mammoth when it comes to run blocking. But in pass protection, that's his weakness. So if Penn State has to leave in an extra blocker, Singleton or Allen, they want to use them in the passing game, so you don't want to have to chip to help Nolan Rucci. So if Nolan Rucci can get pass protection, his pass blocking up to speed, then the loss of Anthony Donko is Penn State's at least able to offset it to an extent. You can also have JB Nelson take reps at right tackle. You have Cooper Cousins, who is getting better week in and week out. So you have options if you're Penn State. The offensive line depth is actually in a really good spot. But defensive line, defensive tackle in particular, now down Alonzo Ford, Hakeem Beamon would have been huge in this case and wouldn't have been as concerning. But now you're just down to Devon J. Thomas, Zane Durant, Keziah Izzard, Ty Blanding, and Xavier Gilliam. Are you ready for the spotlight? Are those redshirt freshmen, true freshmen for Penn State respectively? Are they ready to handle it in the biggest games of their careers if they are called upon? We'll see. College football playoff ranking is getting ready to officially be announced, and we're just waiting on that for the rankings to pop up as the release show is going on. But those are my thoughts on the injuries. We're going to welcome in Kyle Golik of Mike Farrell Sports in just a moment to talk about this on the live show on the other side of this break. And today's live episode, is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And because right now, new customers can bet just $5 and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more. And it's all on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And if we look over at FanDuel.com, Penn State versus Maryland, the lines are posted. Penn State is a hefty 24.5-point favorite, minus 4,000 on the money line. Minus 4,000 on the money line. The total at Maryland, if you're betting Maryland, plus 1,400 on the money line, the total is set at 50.5. If you like those lines, you can bet them over at FanDuel.com. And remember, you will get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Again, that is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And now let's welcome in Kyle Golik from Mike Farrell Sports as we are chatting the college football playoff rankings, injuries as well. Kyle, thank you so much for joining me on this live show.
Hey, Zach, thank you for having me on. Looking forward to commenting on this stuff. I got the iPad fired up and got the rankings showing up here. So they got South Carolina at 15. So that makes it interesting. Palmetto Bowl coming up with Clemson.
They are really taking a long time to figure this out. So thank goodness we have the next half hour to try to figure out what even the rankings are going to look like, because this I liked when they were released at 7 o'clock, and now they're released at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So this certainly, I guess they had their clock set back, right? In a sense.
I think, didn't they have the Maui Invitational on between Michigan State?
Oh, of course, the Maui Invitational. That'll do it.
I mean, it's a fantastic basketball tournament.
No, it is. No, but other things take precedent here. Are you? Let's start with some hypotheticals before we actually get confirmation of this. Do you think the committee will rank Penn State below Notre Dame? Do you think Notre Dame will jump the Nittany Lions here?
I think they're going to. I really do.
Goodness.
The reason I'm thinking they're going to is, Notre Dame's starting, they're going to weigh heavily the demolition of Army. They really shouldn't, but at the end of the day, it's a ranked win. They absolutely dominated them in Yankee Stadium. That is, Penn State really doesn't have that sort of win. And I think the committee's going to forgive Notre Dame's Northern Illinois transgression. So
should they? Should they? Notre Dame's Northern Illinois is not even a good MAC team. At least Bowling Green's vying for a conference title. Northern Illinois is nowhere to be found.
But there's a shocker. Clemson at 12. I asked Dabo after the Pitt game. If they're a playoff team, and he went on a 5-minute rant about it.
You got 5 minutes out of Dabo.
Nice. Dabo will go on. He talked forever. I mean, I just feel like they're going to want to inflate Notre Dame, and they're going to try to figure a way for Notre Dame to kind of get that wrestle that 5 seat from the Big Ten championship game loser. I think that's
so. You even think they're going to jump in Ohio State?
I think they would jump in Ohio State even.
People want to talk and complain about Penn State's strength of schedule. Oh, they beat a ranked Navy. Oh, they beat a ranked Army. Illinois would run the tables against both of those teams.
It depends which Illinois team showed up, though. I mean, they've shown Jekyll and Hyde, i.e., the Purdue game.
They're still 8-3 with losses to Penn State, Ohio State, and if I'm not mistaken, Minnesota.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm getting that gut feeling. I'm kind of curious where they place SMU as well, because they've already clinched an ACC championship game appearance in Charlotte.
Well, we'll see it. We'll see it in real time. I want to pull up Notre Dame's schedule, because they beat Texas A&M, but I feel like losing at home to Northern Illinois completely offsets that. That completely offsets that. Oh, but they have ranked wins against Louisville and Navy and Army. Are those really top 25 teams at the end of the day?
Nope.
Are those really? Because, Penn State, USC and Illinois, and honestly, I think West Virginia would beat some of those teams.
Not this West Virginia squad this year.
I guess you've seen more of them than I have, but
yes. Their pass defense is atrocious, and
so they'd beat Navy.
Yeah, that's really it. And I think a lot of people fell in love with the academies being undefeated, so they kind of got inflated. Plus, Notre Dame really needed something after Florida State had a historic downturn.
That's what I'm saying. They beat the likes. They lose to Northern Illinois, and then they play Purdue, Miami of Ohio. Oh, Louisville's ranked at the moment, but then we realize, okay, Louisville's not actually as good. Then you play Stanford. Georgia Tech is respectable. I think Georgia Tech could definitely beat some of the teams that Penn State has beaten. Navy was not a top 25 team, but they snuck in, so that counts as a ranked win, right? Florida State, terrible, awful, abysmal, whatever negative adjective you want to use to describe. Virginia, same thing. I mean, Penn State would be undefeated with this schedule, would they not?
Oh yeah, I mean if Penn State this year avoids an Ohio State clunker, then yeah, they're an undefeated team. I really feel Penn State, even in the SEC, and I know I've taken some grief from Barstool Alabama over it. This Penn State team would be, I think, be undefeated in the SEC, and I'm not saying it to.
Whoa.
It's which really SEC team, like Texas's best win is Vanderbilt. I wouldn't even give Michigan any credit. Maybe give a little Oklahoma there because of the rivalry. But, Oklahoma was down how many wide receivers and offensive linemen going into that game? So I'm not real certain. Alabama is very one-dimensional. If anyone's been checking my calls, I've been saying to ad nauseum, you can't, I just did this in a column about blaming the failed season on DeBoer for making Milroe more a one-man act instead of a point guard. That was the one thing Saban said at SEC Media Days this year, is we needed to get through because the 34-24 loss to Texas, he didn't take care of the football. He was reckless and everything. That's why he sat against South Florida last year, is we need to make you a point guard. DeBoer's like, well, you're like Michael Penix. So, I think with how that transpired, and really naming a back outside in the SEC slate, Justice Haynes against Missouri is the only time a back has gone over 50 yards. But looks like Notre Dame's 5 and Penn State's 4.
Okay, so we're getting to that point here. Again, you have it pulled up. We're waiting for these rankings in real time, and then we'll react to. Like I started off the show even before. I wanted to talk about the injuries, which we'll probably circle back to here because now there's no controversy. If Penn State's 4 and Notre Dame is 5, then all is correct because they have the same record, and the difference is a loss at home to Northern Illinois versus a loss at home to the number 2 Ohio State Buckeyes. Which one's going to hurt you more, Kyle? Which one?
I guess the committee down in Dallas doesn't value the Northern Illinois Boneyard collection.
I mean, Penn State played Bowling Green close. They still won. It does avoiding it's the same thing. Penn State played Minnesota close. They still won. You cannot say the same thing about Alabama or Ole Miss or Texas A&M, yet somehow they're still in the college football playoff conversation.
Oh, absolutely. And it's looking like if these latest rankings come to fruition, we get to see the guy that everyone Googles in Happy Valley. Good old Kurt Signetti in Indiana.
Okay, so that's where they would that's that next hypothetical matchup.
Yes.
Yes, Penn State is officially back in at number 4, no change in the ranking as it should be. As it should be. Penn State is number 4 in the latest college. So here on November 26th, 2024, Penn State is number 4 in the college football playoff ranking. Again, that is correct. And same thing. Oregon, Ohio State, Texas should be 1, 2, 3. Penn State should be 4. Notre Dame is the 5th team. All of those rumors and rumblings that Notre Dame was going to jump Penn State, is that just the media machine? Is that the mainstream sports media trying to drum up a conversation? Are they trying to create a news cycle, essentially?
That's, I think, what they're trying to at least drum up a narrative, kind of like what Kirk Herbstreit made famous about Florida State, and when it came to fruition, he rued the day on that. That's really what it is. Even I was starting to give a little lean towards Notre Dame because they're a little bit more healthier. I really like watching. They can really run the football. I love their offensive line. Jeremiah Love is fun to watch. Defensively, they are fantastic. So I was starting to bite a little bit myself. Even like I said, I would say that the Northern Illinois game is forgiven. I mean, they still got to play Southern California here in the final game of the season. So.
But what game forgives that? Because they didn't. It's not like they beat another elite team.
Game, but it is a collection of performances and how Marcus Freeman has got them playing.
Okay.
And I think that's where you could see the forgiveness. But this committee's still saying, look, they haven't forgiven it. So,
I mean, to an extent, I mean, being number 5 is nothing to bat an eye at. Just
no, it's not.
They should not jump Penn State, because I look at, again, they beat Minnesota, they beat Illinois. I think those teams are better. I think those teams would absolutely beat an Army, a Navy, a Louisville, and more. So let's talk more about Penn State's number 4 ranking. They are ranked correctly, but on the other side of this break, we'll talk about that. And then Kyle, circle back and get your thoughts on where, because you mentioned Notre Dame's healthier. So do you have concerns about the injuries? We'll talk about that more on the other side of this break. And today's episode is also brought to you by Gametime. You got to download the Gametime app, because buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks. That makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier than before. Gametime Picks filters out all of the fluff to show you only incredible deals on incredible seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. You can go to the Gametime app, or you can go to gametime.co, and I have tickets pulled up for Penn State versus Maryland, and the Gametime picks are already pulled up right in front of me. You can get the top deals on Gametime listed in front of you when you have them sorted. Here is a super deal. Upper end zone on the south side of the stadium, section SFU, row 61, all in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. $26 per ticket. That's with fees included. If you're just looking for the lowest price on tickets for Penn State versus Maryland. North side of the stadium, upper end zone, section NDU, row 84, $6. All in pricing on Gametime, $6 per ticket. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app. Create an account and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay, Kyle, so you mentioned the fact that Penn State is not as healthy as a Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. Injuries are piling up here at the wrong, I mean, injuries never pile up at a right time. So, but really, even before 4 weeks out, roughly 4 weeks out from that hypothetical opening playoff game where Penn State would host, everything's going to go well. It looks like everything's aligning. Penn State beats Maryland and then hosts a home playoff game against whomever. If that's Indiana, if that's so, but you have concerns about the injuries. So do I. Alonzo Ford, difference maker. Anthony Donko, difference maker. Julian Fleming, Elliott Washington. Not as big of an impact, but those players matter. And if they're, I imagine those two players would be back, but what if they're not? What if they're not 100%, even if they are available? So now Penn State, Nicholas Singleton is getting healthy at the right time, which is a good thing for Penn State. But depth matters, especially when the season just got longer.
Oh, absolutely. And what I worry about with these latest rounds with Ford and Donko is, you know, Donko was playing at a freshman All-American level and up for the Sean Alexander Freshman of the Year award. That's how good he was playing from the tackle position. You don't replace that easily. You know, with Ford, and you were alluding to this as you kicked off the stream here, you know, no Beeman, no Ford, you know, mm-hmm. When you get into that meat of the defensive line and when you're looking for the rotation, it's nothing against the young guys that are freshmen, but their bodies, they're not experienced. They don't have the mass. They haven't perfected the moves. They don't understand the schemes of what effective D-line play comes in the center. When you really start to understand the goal of clogging holes and absorbing linemen, this is huge right now. And really it's something that we got to watch for against Maryland. This should be a game where I really feel Penn State's going to be advantageous. This is a game Penn State should win, obviously, mm-hmm. but we need to see what that defensive line will do and what the rotation. We need to see a lot more reps from those underclassmen here, because losing guys like that, like thank God we still have Kazai Izzard, because we would really be hurting without that. On the offensive line, I'm less I wouldn't say I'm not full 10 panic mode, but I'm at least
No.
a solid 7 because the
Okay.
Penn State offense, without Fleming, and I'm starting to get worried about it. Even though you're not seeing the gains in the vertical attack with Fleming, it's what you mentioned earlier. It's what he's doing on blocking assignments and setting the edge and on those little things that you don't get stats for.
And the ghost routes. He sets up a lot of plays to open up routes for other wide receivers.
Absolutely. He's an excellent route runner. Again, you don't see it in the stat sheet. So who is that guy? And Penn State hasn't identified that guy. So it becomes a bigger deal. And then, when you start looking at the slate of games that could potentially face Penn State, and Elliott Washington is absolutely necessary in the secondary. Mm-hmm. You're definitely going to need that. So I'm at a very concerned level. I think for to lower that for me, we're going to need to see a lot of guys in Maryland get a lot of meaningful reps where it's like, hey, we need to win this game. We know we're going to win this game. We got to stick you in there. We got to have you feel some heat, and I got to see some performance out of it. Because right now, if you're thinking, hey, if you look at the bracket of how it's going out tonight, Penn State would then travel to Atlanta, a return trip to the Peach Bowl against number 3 Miami, and you got to deal with a Cam Ward, that and Damian Martinez. I don't know how much of your viewers are familiar with Martinez.
No, Martinez is really good. It came from Morgan State.
Morgan State, yes. This isn't an easy draw there for Penn State whatsoever. I know everyone likes to poke at the numerous close calls the Hurricanes have, but this is a team that has really matured. And one of the things that you can't ding Mario Cristobal on is he's an excellent recruiter, an excellent builder in the trenches, especially on the offensive line.
And what are we talking about? The trenches. We're talking about issues in the trenches.
Is an absolute mauler for the Canes. And that was the guy Mario was able to beat Bill O'Brien on when O'Brien was recruiting for Alabama up in O'Brien's neck of the woods in Massachusetts. So that's not an easy draw. And again, if you really look at it, if Penn State were to slide even to the Notre Dame position, they'd be facing SEC champion Texas, which, that's where you start ringing the fire alarms for, hey, where's an Elliott Washington because of Sarkisian's attack with the receivers. So, yeah, we really, really need to start seeing meaningful reps from guys in a depth because right now the lack of experience and lack of playing time has come up. And this is, like you said, it's such a shame that Akeem Beeman walked away from this team, or we don't know the full story on
Exactly.
it.
We don't know.
Because this is where he really could have shined, raised his stock, and like you said, he'd be out of eligibility after this year, but he could really point to this as resume writing where, hey, he might be a person that gets signed after the draft to get invited to NFL training camp if he so desired to continue his football career. This would have been the opportunity for him. So yeah, it is a shame.
No, it's not to say that Penn State still can't win games without those guys, but you saw it show up immediately against Minnesota. That, the ground. So Tom Allen did a great job scheming Minnesota's ground game away in the second half. First half, it was a bit of a struggle. I mean, Marcus Major and Darius Taylor had their way in the ground game. And funny enough, even though Minnesota's biggest asset is the rushing attack, they're averaging 3.5 yards per carry. It's not the best. No. And against Penn State in the first half, they were averaging over 5 yards. And then Tom Allen schematically was able to take second half adjustments. Halftime adjustments are still king for both Penn State offensively and defensively. But right now, my focus is on Penn. Funny enough, a year later, how things change. If I had to pick which side is going to carry this team, Andy Kotelnicki in the offense or Tom Allen in the defense, it's Andy Kotelnicki in the offense. And James Franklin proved that by calling a fake punt when the game is on the line in your own territory at what, give or take the 30, 35. Minnesota would have absolutely won that game if it didn't work.
Yeah.
And you said, let's keep the offense on the field rather than putting the defense back out there to make a stop.
I've seen Kirby Smart call those calls, Nick Saban. It was refreshing to see Franklin realizing, look, I gotta win it right here, because so many times in the past, hey, let's put pressure on our defense to make
That's elite coaching right there, what he did.
that,
That is
that
elite
really
coaching.
that really is. I mean, Dominic Rulli had a great block on there. Luke Reynolds really hit it. He's gonna. I've talked to you all year at games about this. I'm really excited to see Luke progress, because he really has it. And really to see him get a major play like that is a momentum builder. So, you know, it's one of those things that, maybe, you may look at this first round matchup with, again, what I would refer to as the Big Ten light championship game against Indiana, kind of like the losers bracket, essentially.
It'd be a semifinal. Yeah, it'd be a
Yeah,
semifinal matchup.
it would be, but it might be a blessing in disguise to enable the team to get ready and maybe get that primer win prior to the Peach Bowl against Miami. I mean, that's what it's forecasted right now.
Yeah.
Will that transpire? Who knows? I mean, Indiana's still going to take care of Purdue, and remember, Purdue nearly clipped Illinois, and that's a big time rivalry game there. So we shall see.
Yeah, all right. So let's finish up with that, Kyle. I think that's the perfect topic, that Penn State would play Indiana, hypothetically win at home at Beaver Stadium against the Hoosiers. I mean, the Hoosiers at least they're a playoff caliber team, but at least showed that, okay, that they're not this juggernaut, that they are benefiting from an easier schedule. And then Penn State would play against Miami, who I think they at least can match up with and get into a shootout with. I think now that's because of the changes now on defense. Is Elliott Washington going to be back at that point in time? You don't have KJ Winston. You don't have Alonzo Ford, and you hopefully don't pick up any more key impact player injuries along the way. So if everything's stagnant right now and Penn State has the team that we see here at the end of November, all the way at the end of December, okay, I still feel that Penn State is in good position to beat Miami. And then same thing with Texas. You're not facing an Oregon. You're not facing Ohio State again. Those are teams that Penn State can beat. Like, this is an ideal path. Indiana to Miami to Texas to the championship. Anything can happen on the football field. That's why the game's not played on paper. But don't tell the national networks that, Kyle. Don't tell the national networks that, because there's a quote flying around from Booger McFarland again about how Penn State first struggled with UCLA. Now the new one is, don't pay attention to that column, meaning the loss column for those 3 SEC teams. Oh my goodness. Don't play the season anymore. Just don't play the season anymore. Results don't matter. Just start the postseason, have a free-for-all 130 team football tournament, and just play one and done. That's how we should do it. What's the point of the regular season anymore?
And that's the issue I've always had with, ESPN holding all, like, having the married to the SEC and then having the playoff and not having
they're married to the playoff.
They're gonna pump it up, and when you have a situation where it's not very objective, where it's like, oh, you need to finish here in like your division, like in the NFL, to make the playoff, and where it's like, we can pick you, and it's now all of a sudden subjective. This is where you can have the politicking. That Miami game's a lot more dangerous than most people realize. And this is where you would see a potential issue of missing Donko if Rucci can't pick up on the pass
Yes,
block.
because you would get into a shootout. There would be a lot more throwing in this game.
Well, here's the danger with that. With Donko out, you not only have that, but you also got to realize the defensive front for Miami's vicious. I mean, Hurricane Bane, as they refer to him, as he's a sophomore off the edge there. He's going to be a future great pro, and he's really been showing lights and flashes of that. Tyler Barron's another one that'll be able to cause some havoc. So if Rucci isn't doing well there, that's going to make Drew's life not comfortable. And then when you look at their 3 wide receivers they got out there, Res Repo and George and Horton, it's not going to be an easy day for Penn State secondary if they don't have an Elliott Washington there. I enjoy their 2-back attack in Fletcher and Martinez. So it's when you start looking around at this, and Cam Ward is a little bit more polished and fluent as a dual threat than in my mind than Drew. I mean, Drew's gotten better, and Drew knows how to extend the play, but Cam can
Obviously, yeah, he's a true dual threat. Yeah.
Yeah. This is where it's, that Peach Bowl isn't a gimme. And that's where you start.
Not anymore.
Yeah. It is your injuries now to the point of where you may have missed out because, hey, now it's like, man, you really could have used some depth in that interior defensive line, that Donko injury and whatnot, Washington for sure. So again, obviously Penn State got to take care of business, Saturday, and obviously whomever they would get in Beaver Stadium at home. But if they do get to the Peach Bowl against Miami, that's not an easy draw. It's not something everyone should be like all giddy for. That's a very talented team, and Mario, I can tell you, down in Miami, is really looking for that like signature moment. And he had that same thing when he was at Oregon, when he got that comeback with Herbert and gang and against Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl. So don't be, it's not one to get giddy over, folks.
Just real quick, you know these teams better than I do. Clemson and SMU, or Miami. Which of the three would be the most favorable matchup for Penn State? Because I know this is what the projection says, but there is an ACC championship that has to be played. It's not a guarantee that Miami wins and gets that 3 seed.
Absolutely. In our fantasy world, you hope Syracuse knocks off Miami this Saturday. Clemson gets in there, and Clemson is able to beat SMU, and Penn State has to get to Clemson. I watched Clemson. I was at the Pitt Clemson game. Clemson's dealing with massive offensive line injuries. And again, you still got to deal with the Cade Klubnik, Antonio Williams connection. And that's an absolute thrill ride to watch. And I got to watch that firsthand. Bear Carter's an absolute monster on defense. That's the matchup you want because both teams have a lot of significant injuries. Both have a lot of athletes. That, to me, is the even game. SMU's a wild card in the aspect of you don't know how Jennings is going to be. I can't remember their one elite edge rusher. It just escapes me at the moment. He's really, really good off the edge. It'll come to me once we're off the air.
Isaiah Smith?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Or is it Jafari Harvey?
I think it's Harvey.
It could be either of them because they're 6.5, 5.5 sacks respectively.
Yeah, I'm just, like I said, it's drawing a blank on me. But SMU, I think, is a flip of a coin. Miami is a rougher. So I think you would want to see, again, you want to root for our old rival, the Orange, this weekend, and hope their coach showers after the game from a win. Remember how he doesn't use soap. So you want to root for Syracuse. So that way you get Clemson, SMU, and Charlotte, and hope Clemson can outduel the Mustangs in Charlotte. And if Penn State were somehow to get Indiana in the Big Ten Light Championship game in advance, I think Clemson's a favorable draw.
Indiana's a favorable draw. That ACC opponent, whoever it is, Miami would present the toughest matchup, but I still do like Penn State's chances. I would lean Texas, but at least it's a more winnable game opponent, and I wouldn't even count Notre Dame out in that situation. Notre Dame wins, plays Texas, and potentially those games I would lean Texas. I would actually like Penn State better against Notre Dame, but it's not Oregon and it's not Ohio State. I think those are the clear-cut 2 best teams in college football right now and in the future in a month's time. So if they knock each other out, one of them knocks each other out on the other side of the bracket, that's a good thing for Penn State. He is Kyle Golik of MikeFarrellSports.com. Also is a member of the Football Writers of America Association and Pro Football Writers Association as well. Kyle, thanks so much for the time talking on this live show, reacting to the college football playoff rankings, as well as the latest Penn State football player injuries.
Thank you, Zach. See you Saturday, brother.